What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, and today I'm back to talk to you guys about Warhammer 40K. No surprise there. So today I kind of want to zero in on detachments, on points, and overall just what's the best size and best way to play Warhammer 40K against somebody, your friends, tournaments, etc. Now, most 40k players know that you can't just jump into a game of 40k. There is a ton, and I mean a ton, of prep work before you can actually bust out the table and start moving minis. First and foremost, I think is pretty obvious. You have to have an army ready, painted, or at least glued and able to move and whatnot. I'm not going to talk about all that because that could be its own video. You got to buy the models, get the codices, make the army list, paint them, glue them, and whatnot. But I think when you got your army ready and you're getting ready to play against somebody else, the one thing you guys have to agree on, which most of the time I feel is an agreement that you decide without actually having to talk to your opponent, is with which edition you're going to be playing. For the most part, it's always going to be the newest edition, in this case, 9th edition. So, you're going to be playing 9th edition. Now, the next step is, how many points are we going to be playing? Is this going to be 1,000 points, 500 points, 1,500 points, 2,000 points? And that's where things kind of start to get tricky, because if you're new to 40k, I think it's best you start off with a low point game, because the more points you put in there, the more bookkeeping you have to do. Obviously, the more models you gotta have, the more rules you have to know and be aware of. And at that point, it might be a little bit too overwhelming if you're new to 40k. So I think if you're just trying to play casual and just to get a good grip on the rules, anywhere from 1,000 and lower is a pretty good amount of points. I'd say 500 is probably best, because then you could make that work with certain detachments. So if you jump into a 500 point game, that gives you the option to go into a combat patrol. So what that means is you only have a single detachment and you can put up to 500 points. Now, that's when you start looking at all the different ways of building your army. Do I go with a brigade, a patrol, maybe even a battalion? And that's all going to factor in based on the command points available, as well as what type of army you're going to bring. In previous editions, it might have been better to soup your armies, meaning bring in multiple detachments and kind of play off the synergy there, or have one detachment kind of fill in a gap that another detachment isn't securing. So that's also another thing to think about, as well as the amount of HQs, troops, elite, fast attack, heavy support, flyers, and dedicated transports that you want to bring to your list. So in my 40k games, if we do play a combat patrol or 500 points, most of the time we go with patrol, meaning that you have 1 to 2 HQs, 1 to 3 troops, and then you have to pick 2 or less of everything else, so 0 to 2 elites, 0 to 2 fast attack, etc. Because that gives us the more balance of the armies, because obviously if you go with heavy support or elites, those generally are more points or power, so that kind of is going to be a smaller army size, but less bodies on the battlefield. With this, most people just go with the compulsory 1 HQ and maybe 2 to 3 troops in order to grab those objectives, because that's what 9th edition is pushing the games more in that area. Now, of course, these probably mean nothing if you're literally just playing tabletop 40k with your buddies on some non-official thing, you're just there to have fun, then yeah, you don't have to think about the force organization chart. Bring in 6 heavy supports, bring in all flyers, or maybe you just want to bust out Mortarion and prove that he is the better Demon Primarch against Magnus. So if you're playing it that way, then yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter what the rules are for that. But for the most part, patrol really helps you kind of make a good core for low point games. When you jump into those 1,000 points, 1250, 1500, 2000 points, then I think it's best to go with a big battalion. With this, you get a little bit more options, bringing in a minimum of 3 troops, minimum of 2 HQs. Elites you can bring up to 6, fast, heavy, up to 3, and 2 flyers. So I think that's probably the most common way to build your army, battalion. And I think that brings a good variety as well as a good solid core with the amount of HQs and troops. Way back when we first started playing 40K in 5th edition, I felt that most sizes of battle reports and games were around the 1500 to 2000 points, and that's really good if you want to have like an epic all-out battle, really entertaining, a lot going on. And I agree, the bigger the battle, usually the more epic it is, until you start to get past that 2000 point mark. Once you hit 3000 points into like apocalyptic range, then I think the game just drags on a bit too long and it becomes really tiresome, and overall it's just going to take too long. So I think like that sweet spot is in the 1000 point to 2000 point, probably around 1500. So 1500 being that sweet spot of 40K where you can get a really good sized game going for not that long of a time consumption. With 1500 points, you could soup if you wanted to, because you have that option. Maybe you want to bring in a vanguard and double that up with a patrol. Or maybe you want to do heavy support, or maybe you just want to bring in super heavies. You could go ahead and do that. But at the same time, that 1500 point mark, we really don't play that much in my play group. Usually when we play games, they're 1250 points, which is still falls under the strike force. So you could bring up to 3 detachments. But for the most part, we play 1250 points, and pretty much everybody always just goes with a single battalion. That's the true, or is a tried and true way of playing 40K in our play group, and for the most part it's entertaining because you still get a good mixture of units hitting the battlefield. You get a really fun game. You can still synergize. You can still bring in like that awesome super heavy you want and still have points remaining to fill out your force org chart. So I think that's a pretty good range if you want to play quicker games. Or you can bump it up to 1750. So that's a little bit more than your average 1500 game, but maybe you could bring in that extra Demon Primarch or a Gilliman, or maybe you wanted to try out some other models that you're not really too sure of, and you have that good core of 1500 points. Why not try it out with that extra 250? So yeah, based on length and the amount of units and crazy detachments you can bring in, I'd say 1500 points is the best type of Warhammer 40K games out there. Not too long, good variety, and overall just a nice game. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think is the best way to play Warhammer 40K? Is it apocalypse games? Is it games that are within the strike force, so 1000 to 2000 points? Or maybe you just play Unbound and you just bring in whatever, not thinking about your brigade detachment or supreme detachment. You just bring in whatever you got. So again, guys, let me know your thoughts below. And yeah, that's all I got for today. Stay subscribed for more things 40K and more things creepy, because it is October and we've got some creepy pastas coming your way soon. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.